We need to talk about something that comes up so frequently that it's obvious that we should discuss this. We need to talk about conversion. I receive, as you can imagine, many emails every day, messages from around the world. The question that I receive more frequently than any other, how do I convert to Judaism? What do I do? Now, it's very important to bear in mind that the vast majority of people who would contact me are former Christians. The numbers are absolutely staggering. The key is that people very frequently make a mistake in their approach to this. First, that's very important is it's vital for you to understand that there are two ways to essentially convert to Judaism. Because the Jewish people are an ethno-religious group, and we're pretty much unique in the world in that way, meaning we're a nation, the children of Israel, the descendants of Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob, of course, but we're also a faith. That's a very unusual combination. That's not the story of Islam, it's not the story of Christianity, but it is the story of the Jewish people. There are some people who simply want to convert to the faith of Israel, but without joining the nation of Israel, okay? That really is a conversion, although conventionally we don't say that. But that would be becoming a ben Noach. A ben Noach means a member of the Chasidi Umas Olam, which means the pious among the nations of the world. There are 7 Noachide laws, and what's vital about them is that one keeps them, observes them, not because it makes sense to you, but because the God of Israel, the God of Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob, commanded you. So you're not joining the nation of Israel, but you're joining the faith of Israel. And such people are assured a place in the world to come. In fact, one could say that the entire Messianic age really is a story about non-Jews who turn to the people of Israel, grab their shirts and say, we want to go with you, and become precisely as B'nai Noach. Moreover, one can easily make the case that the Noachide faith is really, in a sense, the oldest religion in the world, in a sense, because that's where it really all traces itself back to. For instance, we are introduced to the Sabbath right in Genesis 2. God sets it aside and makes the 7th day holy, for sure. But if you look at this epic chapter, there's no commandments there. Why? Because the Jewish nation has not yet been forged. It will be in the last 39 chapters of the book of Genesis, and of course in Exodus, the Jewish nation is inaugurated. I want to get to the converting to Judaism, meaning joining the nation of Israel as well as the faith of Israel. Because this is the area, I'll be frank with you, people very often, too often, make mistakes in their approach to this. First thing, an Orthodox rabbi is not going to be running to try to convert you. If anything, he'll try to get you to think about it a few times. Why? If you don't go through a conversion to Judaism, and you remain a ben Noach, then you don't have to keep the Sabbath, you don't have to keep kosher, you don't do any of those things. Now, I know many B'nai Noach, let me make this very clear so you're not confused, many people who are B'nai Noach who won't eat pork, and that's their prerogative. I know many B'nai Noach who will only eat kosher meat that's slaughtered properly. They're not obligated to, but they want to. And that's absolutely fine, but they're doing that voluntarily. You got it? So, of course, if someone doesn't feel like eating pork, and there's a good reason not to eat pork, and even if you're not a Jew, the key reason is that Torah does refer to such an animal as unclean and refers to certain creepy creatures as basically an abomination. So it's sure, it absolutely makes sense, but the key is you're not obligated. And there are many foods that you eat in a non-kosher restaurant that you think there's no pork, but pork is used in the base of soups and all kinds of things like that. I want to get this through very clearly with you, because here is the key point. People frequently make the mistake in the following way. They call up a rabbi on the phone. They call the synagogue on the phone. They send an email to an Orthodox synagogue saying, I want to convert to Judaism. This happens constantly. So I don't know where you live. You live in the Midwest, you live in like Ohio, Wisconsin, Oklahoma, or you live on the West Coast or the East Coast, where there are more Jews. And people think that they're going to write an email to a synagogue, and the synagogue that I want to convert to Judaism, and the synagogue is going to throw a party. Now, there's a good reason why former Christians think this way, because if someone goes into a church and says, I want to convert to Christianity, in 1 second they'll get baptized. You understand? So they presume that Judaism is a different faith, but basically we want to convert the world also. It's not that we don't want to convert the world, we just want all the world to know about the one God of Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob, but they don't actually have to convert to the nation of Israel. Moreover, and this is a key point, this is going to be a very critical issue, if you convert to Judaism, you cannot undo it. And this is very important for you to understand. It's irreversible. So if someone converts to Judaism, and it's a process typically that at least takes a year, it could take 2 years, 3 years, it's a long process. It's not simple. And let's say, God forbid, after a person converts to Judaism, 3 years later they decide, it's not for me, they can't undo it, which means for the rest of her life, for the rest of his life, he must keep the mitzvot. Now, not to scare anyone, a significant number of commandments that we find in the Torah are not obligatory for Jews who, for instance, don't live in the land of Israel. Are only binding on women, not binding on men. There are many commandments that are binding on men that are not binding on women. Got it? There are many commandments that are binding on us if there's a temple standing. If there's no temple, there's no sacrificial system, then none of those commandments apply to us. Just like Daniel of blessed memory, he lived in a time when there was no temple, right? But he couldn't bring sacrifices and offerings because he lived during the Babylonian exile. So I don't want you to think that you convert to Judaism and suddenly 613 commandments. Actually, the number of commandments upon a Jew is just a few hundred. Today, if there was a temple, it would be more than that. Again, there are even, just to make you aware of this, there are even commandments on a thief. There's a mitzvah in the Torah, just to give you an understanding of this. And especially if you're a former Christian, this could be very confusing to you. There's a mitzvah in the Torah of Veheshiv hagzel asher gozel, that a person who steals something, that you should return it, right? Now, let me ask you a question. Let's say you just didn't steal anything, right? So does that mean I have to fulfill that commandment? So maybe I have to go into a bank and rob the bank and then return the money. Please don't do it. It's a federal crime, very serious. Don't do any of that. It doesn't apply to you, just like in the United States, as an example. If your vision falls below a certain level, right, you can't operate a motor vehicle without glasses or some sort of visual assistance, right? Those are laws in every state in America, right? But just think about it. Let's say you have 20/20 vision. So it just doesn't apply to you. It's not that it's not a valid law. It is. You believe it in 100%. It just doesn't apply to you because you have terrific vision and you don't need glasses. I don't need glasses except for reading. I never needed glasses for driving, okay? I believe the law is a good law. It just has nothing to do with me. So I'm trying to not scare you because it's not really difficult to be a religious Orthodox Jew. The only thing is that if you live in a place where there are no religious Jews, so it's hard to get kosher meat, so don't do it. For example, fresh water is fairly plentiful, right? But if you happen to live in the middle of the Sahara, it's tough. Don't live in the middle of a desert. I mean, this is just logical. Religious Jews would live in a religious neighborhood where everything's accessible, everything's available. Let's get back to our point. This is very critical for you to understand. If you feel a calling that you want to join the Jewish nation, not just become a Ben Noach, pursue it, but listen to me very carefully. Listen like you've never listened in your life. please do not send a synagogue, an Orthodox synagogue, an email saying you want to convert. And don't call the synagogue and tell them you want to convert. You will almost certainly, I would say 90% you will get no reply at all. None at all. Maybe some synagogues might say something, but I'll explain to you what's going on. Imagine for a moment that you're going out on a date, right, with some fellow, right? And you get on the phone and I guess you talk a little bit before so you talk to a fellow, you never met him in your life, and he starts to tell you that he wants to marry you and have 3 children. So you would go, whoa, we didn't even meet yet. Now, you probably would find that very peculiar, but if you called up a girl on the phone and you didn't even go on a date yet, you're just talking, and she's talking about she wants 6 children and get married on Tuesday, it's just odd. We haven't even met yet. See, when you're converting to Judaism in the conventional sense, what you're doing is you're joining the Jewish nation. So you don't, again, from a Christian standpoint, if you're coming from Christianity or Islam, this doesn't make sense, because in Islam, all you do is say one line, one sentence, one proclamation, and you're a Muslim. All you do is proclaim the Shahada, and you're a Muslim. In Christianity, you can convert, you get usually baptized, and you're a Christian. It happens in 5 minutes, and they can't wait to do it to you. There's nothing wrong with that technically, but what happens is that former Christians just presuppose that you can apply the same thing to Judaism. Now, people may think that Judaism is more eclectic, more accepting, more open than Christianity. It's a little different than that. There isn't listen carefully, the imperative to convert to the nation of Israel, because you don't need to be saved by converting to Judaism, meaning joining the nation. Christianity will tell you you're going to go to hell if you're not a Christian. So there's an imperative. For Judaism, it isn't there. Do you follow? What you want to do is find an Orthodox synagogue. Go online, okay? I don't want you to call them. It's a big mistake. Don't write to them. Nothing will happen. Don't find the rabbi's phone number. Don't do any of those things. Now, if you know a Jewish person that belongs to a congregation, you certainly can ask your buddy who you work with, can I go with you to synagogue? That's great. If the synagogue has classes, you don't have to be polite and ask permission to attend. I would say look on their website, but 95% of the time, there's no entrance fee. You just go and just get a feel for it. Of course, have an Art Scroll Siddur. There are books online. Art Scroll is the largest Jewish publisher in the world, where you'll get receive a lot of information. But what you want to do is, let's say you live in Memphis, Tennessee, as an example. It's a fairly large Orthodox community in kind of the South, right? If in Miami, I don't even know how many synagogues there are there. Try different synagogues out. Just visit. Just go to a class, go to a service. If you're a man, have a kippah to go in. And don't tell them, hi, I want to convert. Just go and get a feel for it. There's nothing wrong with going to different congregations, finding one where you feel a particular connection to the rabbi, where you feel comfortable with the environment, and seeing one that's a good fit. Introduce yourself. They'll ask you, who are you, so on. You just tell them, if asked, you say, look, I'm someone who really is interested in the Jewish faith. I wasn't raised that way, but it's something I want to learn about. Okay? That's all. You just tell them that. If you want to say that I made this video and you decided to do it, fine. Not a problem at all. But the key point is, go in, get a feel for it. Let them get to know you. Because you're talking about joining the Jewish nation. Now, there is a difference between rabbis. There are some rabbis that are very receptive to doing conversions. There are other rabbis who don't do conversions at all. Prepare yourself for this, okay? Chabad houses, which you will find all over the world, really, not always, but certainly more than 50% of them do not perform conversions. That's my guess. I didn't do a survey of this, but I could say that probably no more than half of them would ever be involved in the conversion program, I think. My evidence is purely anecdotal. Maybe I'm wrong. But just be aware that a Chabad house may not be that receptive because their central mandate is to strengthen the people who are already Jewish rather than seeking converts. That's their orientation. Are there Chabad houses in America, as an example, that do perform conversions or work with a Jewish court, a Beth Din to? Yes, there are. But just be aware of that, okay? One other point that you should be aware of, and that is that not all Orthodox synagogues, or let's be more specific, not every Orthodox rabbi or every Orthodox Beth Din is actually accepted by the rabbinate of the State of Israel. And this is very, very, very important. You need to know this. Not every Orthodox rabbi in America or Canada is authorized by the State of Israel to perform conversions. You do not want to bring this up the first time or the 8th time, but at some point when you're comfortable, you kind of want to ask that question online. There are a list of which Jewish courts are authorized to do this. Okay, as far as the State of Israel is concerned, this is going to become really important to you. Once you break the ice and the idea is determined, the idea is accepted, that in fact you are a candidate for conversion, you must live within walking distance of a synagogue. This is absolutely non-negotiable, okay? It's not just because you can't drive to a synagogue on the Sabbath or on holidays, but the rabbi wants you to be part of the Jewish community. Do you get what I'm saying? The rabbi wants you to be part of the Jewish community. So if you say to a rabbi, okay, I don't live within walking distance of an Orthodox synagogue, but I'll rent a hotel room for the weekend, and which is within walking distance, the rabbi almost certainly will tell you that's not acceptable. Could there, where you rent an apartment? So there are possible, but the key is to understand what's really going on here, is the rabbi wants you to acclimate yourself to this community, to be a part of the community as you study and prepare for conversion. So just understand that the goal of the rabbi is to see that you're sincere. The rabbi wants to know more than anything that you're not wishy-washy. The rabbi wants to know that this is not some passing fad and that in 3 years you'll change your mind. For him, that's an absolute nightmare. That's what he's terrified of. So he wants to see that it's not that you're serious. Everyone is coming as serious, but he does want to see that this is not a passing fad. Therefore, I will tell you this, if you're 18 or 19 years old, generally they'll want you to wait a few more years. If you're a teenager, then they usually really will want you, unless you're doing it with your parents. They don't like it because they're scared that a teenager, let me be frank with you, teenagers change. I know this is a big surprise to you, but teenagers, people move from one religion to another. People mature, they have different ideas. And the scary thing for a rabbi is, this is their nightmare. Be very clear about this. Their nightmare is that now you feel like you want to be a Jew. But in 8 years from now, after you've converted, which means Shabbos, you have to keep Shabbos. You have to eat kosher. You have to fulfill the holiday. Now, I want to just tell you this, to give you the inside deal. Religious Jews love performing mitzvot. If you think for 1 second that Jews consider some sort of burden or difficulty or challenge, you're making a very big mistake. And the reason you might think that is because you have been affected by your Christian background and by Pauline thinking that the law has been made a curse for us and all this kind of stuff. So just do know this, that religious Jews, 98% of them love being religious Jews. Doesn't mean they don't have questions. Doesn't mean religious Jews don't wonder, can I do that? Religious Jews love keeping Shabbat, and if this idea seems alien to you, you don't want to convert to Judaism. But if you have a religious Jew who lives in a religious neighborhood, whether it's in New York, in California, certainly here in Jerusalem, religious Jews love the Sabbath. We love it. And we don't want to put pork in our mouths, and we see lobster, we want to call an exterminator. None of this stuff is attractive to us. Now, I did not become the spokesman for the Jewish people, but it's important for you to get a sense of this all, right? People who have converted to Judaism have told me that lobster is something fabulous and delicious. To me, it looks like a cockroach. But everyone seems to say that shrimp is unbelievable and lobster is fantastic and pork chop, bacon is crazy good. I take their word for it. I never tasted it, and frankly, it doesn't look good to me, but it could be whatever. So, but do understand that the mitzvot of the Torah to a Jew is a joy. The longest chapter in all of the Bible is Psalm 119. Psalm 119 contains 176 verses and actually employs an acrostic so it's easier to remember. So bear in mind that this entire chapter, the longest chapter in all of the Bible, is a story about how much I love the Torah. Just read that from beginning to end, and you will get rid of all the epistles of Paul. I'm not trying to introduce Christianity in this particular thing, but you understand that religious Jews really enjoy eating on Shabbos and celebrating in the synagogue. We enjoy that. It really is a great delight to us. Now, it is true that, let's say, I'm asked to lecture in, I don't know, in Juneau, Alaska. It can happen, right? So I don't know exactly what's there. I would really have to make arrangements to have kosher food there. Why? Because I don't know how big the Jewish community is, but it can't be very large, right? So you could, after you convert, because of business or who knows what, it could happen that you have to go somewhere where there really aren't Jews, or you really would have to make an arrangement, but that's not something that comes up, okay? So the key is that if you're very young, the rabbis generally are not wired to do a conversion because they're scared. They're just afraid you're going to change your mind. They want you to be sure. They want you to be comfortable. And they want to get to know you. And that's really why it takes a couple of years to have a proper Orthodox conversion. Why? Because they want to see you're steady. You're going to learn about Jewish law. You're going to learn the mitzvot. And they want you to acclimate to the Jewish community and to see that you're comfortable, they're comfortable with you. Got it? And the rabbi himself, just so you know, may not be the one who actually performs the conversion. I know this will surprise you. So basically, once someone is involved in a conversion process, there are basically three teams involved. One is the Orthodox community. They're going to kind of adopt you, meaning you'll go to a home, a Shabbat home or a holiday home, to enjoy with an Orthodox family. This is very, very common among religious Jews, where you could just, in Israel, you just go to somebody, whatever. Do you have a place to eat for Shabbat? It's normal. People invite other people for the Sabbath. That's just the way it is. It's not only part of our culture, it's actually a part of our Jewish law and understanding. We want to be together as a family, right? Hine matov manoyim shevet achim gam yachad. Brothers are together, okay? So the community is there to provide for you, the potential convert, with a Jewish community. They get to know you, you get to know them, they'll answer your questions. Orthodox Jews, if they're born Orthodox or have been, are very, very knowledgeable about their faith, just so you know. That means unless someone themselves just converted or became religious, Orthodox Jews can read Hebrew, biblical Hebrew fluently. They really are very, very knowledgeable about their faith. It's not like, and I'm not saying this to be disparaging, but if someone goes into an Episcopalian church, many people there never read the New Testament. They don't know. They never read Deuteronomy once in their lives. I don't mean that to be disparaging, but Orthodox Jews just know an enormous amount about their Bible. In fact, let me reframe this for you so you really get this. There are many people who belong to a synagogue who know as much as the rabbi does. Now, usually the rabbi is really a top scholar, but it is not healthy in an Orthodox Jewish environment where the disparity between what a congregant knows and what a rabbi knows should be that large. I mean, the average Orthodox Jewish man, he goes to yeshiva all of his life, he's really quite learned. And many of the people who belong to a congregation are themselves ordained rabbis who just don't practice it. So just bear this in mind. Orthodox Jews read Hebrew. As children, they're taught Hebrew. By the time they're bar mitzvah, Orthodox Jewish kids read Hebrew fluently. It happens to be a very easy language, a very small language. It's easy for many reasons that are beyond the scope of this. So the first team that you should be aware of is the community. They're kind of going to adopt you. You get to know them, they're going to get to know you. The other part of this is the person who essentially is a mentor. It could be a rabbi, it could be a member of the community, it could be several members of the community who's going to study with you. You're going to be given books to read, to study, to really know well, okay? It's not rocket science, but you can't just be thrust into being an Orthodox Jew where you suddenly are keeping kosher and keeping Sabbath and you just don't know what the laws are. That would be insane. So you have to have knowledge of it, so you're going to be learning and you're going to have some sort of mentor. Be careful with this part. There are online people who do mentoring. There are. Some of them are legitimate, but some of them are a little thing. If the prices are crazy high, stay away from it. There are a lot of very good online people who charge to teach, but there should not be a skyrocketing crazy money thing, okay? But of course, if you're hiring someone to tutor you, you very frequently pay for it, but more often than not, people from the community would volunteer to teach you. Okay, you got that? That's the mentor. That's the person who's sort of working with you very closely. In almost all, I will not say all cases, but in almost all cases, the person who's your mentor, that's second part of the team, he will not or she will not be a part of the Beth Din. Now the Beth Din, the court itself, will be comprised of 3 religious men, usually rabbis. One of them will certainly be rabbi. Let's just say they'll all be rabbis, okay, and all be men. So usually the mentor or the sponsoring rabbi is not someone who's actually going to be on the 3-judge court that's going to ultimately perform the conversion. They like to keep that separate. You have a mentoring rabbi who recommends you to a proper Beth Din, a proper court that's made up of 3 men, and he works with the court. He's going to recommend you. He's going to tell them what he thinks of you or where your strong points. He's going to be working with them. Follow? Remember, it's that court that's critical that you want to make sure is recognized by the state of Israel, specifically by the chief rabbinate of Israel. If it's not, and you ever want to make aliyah, meaning become a citizen of Israel, your conversion will not be accepted. Now, there are one caveat also. There are people who have the ability, it's not a simple matter, but there are people who have the ability to move to Israel. That means to get some sort of visa to be here in Israel as a student of full conversion, but you would have to have an income somehow, and you could gain entrance into a conversion program in Israel. They're all packed. It's very hard to get in, but it's under the chief rabbinate. If you get into that, you're really set, because they've got everything in place, and once you convert, that's really a gold standard of conversion. I don't want to convey that's the only gold standard, but that's really, really good, because you're in, and if you wanted, you can become a citizen after your conversion. okay? But the key point I want you to bear in mind is that for the conversion for a woman is two parts. The first part is Kabbalas HaTorah, which means accepting the Torah. And in fact, when you stand before the court at the end of, let's say, a year or 2 years, whatever it is, they're going to ask you questions. They're not going to be hard questions. It's not like you're, taking a bar entrance exam. They're not trying to do that. But they do want to see that you're very comfortable with Jewish law, that you can read Hebrew. You don't have to be an expert. I don't want to scare you, but you should be able to open a prayer book and read, simple passages, know blessings. Of course, they're going to want to know that, okay? That's going to be really important to them. For a woman or a man, the most important feature of conversion is what's called Kabbalas HaTorah, accepting upon yourself the Torah, and being fairly knowledgeable of the Torah. Just fairly knowledgeable. You're not being tested to become a rabbi, but they do want to know that you know how to read Hebrew. It's just simple Hebrew. They don't need you to be an expert. Don't be afraid of this, okay? But this is the most important element of a conversion, of any Orthodox conversion, is that you really say to them that I want to accept upon myself all of the Torah. Remember what I told you about all of the Torah? Remember that little point is very, very critical. It means that you believe that all the Torah is binding. As I mentioned, as if you're a woman, many laws don't apply to you. As you're a man, many laws don't apply to you. But you believe it's from God. That's critical. The second thing that male or female do is they immerse in a mikveh, in an immersion pool. That's a very important stage, but that's an easy part. You don't really have to learn anything about that. It's just, there's the conversion. For a man, there's also a bris milah, a circumcision, okay? If we were living during time when there was a Beis Hamikdash standing, where a temple was standing, so you would also have to bring an offering, a sacrifice. We don't. When the Messiah comes, all the converts will have to bring that sacrifice. It's kind of owed for the future. So that's the key. So for women, there are two central elements: accepting the Torah and immersion in a mikveh. For a man, there's the added feature of circumcision. There is like another element of this, so just be aware of this so you are not offended. There's a big problem that missionaries are trying to infiltrate the Jewish community and are trying to weaponize the conversion program to become Jewish. But what happens after that is they then infiltrate and try to convert others, become a citizen of Israel. Your community may be worried about that, okay? So just be ready for the rabbi to ask you, do you believe in any of the elements of Christianity? Don't be offended by that. Moreover, one other point I should mention, I don't know what city you live in, but for many synagogues, there's unfortunately security is necessary. That's why I said to you at the outset that if you can go with someone who goes to the synagogue, who's Jewish, it makes it easier. I live in Israel. So I know it may sound counterintuitive, but in Israel, I don't know of any synagogue. I'm not saying it doesn't exist. I don't know any synagogue where there's guards and you have to go through security. I don't know of any synagogue like that. But in America, it may be. Now, in the Far East, like in Singapore, there's a lot of security, and in Europe, there's a lot of security. It varies from country to country, and that's a part I can't advise you on. But I can assure you of this: if you're in a country where there is heavy security to get into the synagogue, because Jews are facing anti-Semitism in a way that really we haven't in generations, so then having someone accompany you who's Jewish would be a very good idea. I hope some of the things you've learned here are really helpful. Most important thing, talk to God. Talk to the God of Israel. Ask Him for wisdom and understanding. One other caveat, please. Research your genealogy. I don't know the numbers, but it's really considerably high. A significant number of people who are in a conversion program do DNA testing only to discover quickly, or speak to an elderly relative and discover they were Jewish all along. Now, a DNA test doesn't make you Jewish, even if it tells you that. But a DNA test could tell you what city your Jewish family comes from, and then you can find the tombstones and you can find the absolute proof. Got it? So DNA test itself would not be enough to qualify you as a Jew, but it would tell you, hey, your great-grandmother, she lives in wherever in Louisiana, and she's buried in this tomb, in this grave, and you can go there, and that can really work for you. So while you're in a conversion program, it is good, really a good idea, to hire a genealogist. That's an excellent idea, to really find out about your Jewish background, to find out if you are Jewish. If I don't know the numbers, I'm making this up. But probably, this is all anecdotal, but if I had a bet, I would say 30% of people who engage in a conversion program find out either during the conversion program or following their conversion program that they were Jewish all along. One other caveat I should mention here. If you suspect that you may have Jewish great-grandparents, just as a warning, this happens so often. So a fellow goes to his brother or his first cousin and says, was grandma Jewish? Let's say your maternal first cousin. Because only your mother's mother, biological mother's mother, could determine you're Jewish, right? But what happens is your family are hardcore evangelical Christians. What will happen often, I can't say likely, but it really happens a lot, so be careful. Once your family, perhaps, I don't know this to be the case, but this happens way too often. If you think your family is going to oppose your conversion to Judaism, be careful about what you ask, because they may not be willing to share this information with you because they don't want you to convert. You got it? So just be mindful of that. As you look for information, I don't know what your family's like. I don't know, they may be very supportive of your conversion to Judaism, which very frequently isn't the case, but they may very well oppose it. I don't know the answer to that question. You do, but before you start calling family members, just be cognizant of this and be aware of who you ask and what you say, because you want to get all that very valuable information. May HaKadosh Baruch Hu guide you. May He lead you by the hand. Remember, the rabbi's job is, listen up, to make sure you're okay. His job is to sort of slow you down. That's his job. He's there to make sure you don't convert and it's a mistake. That's his job. Got it? But that's not your job. If you feel a calling that you must be a Jew, that's not your issue. Your issue is that you just move ahead. Just keep moving ahead and pray to HaKadosh Baruch Hu for wisdom and understanding. We're living in a remarkable time, and may we witness the coming of the true Messiah quickly in our time. Shalom. If you enjoyed this program, please like and subscribe.
אדון עולם אשר מלך בטרם כל יציר נברא לעת נעשה בחפצו כל אזי מלך שמו נקרא ואחרי